So hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Best Practice in Conversation. Today I am delighted to be speaking to Treasa Hannify, Key to You coach, and Treasa is going to talk to us today about particularly, I suppose, overwhelm that many of us are feeling over the last year since the pandemic started, say in March 2020. And we're going to look at maybe, I suppose, recognizing it and acknowledging it, and then maybe looking at ways that we can help to deal with it or manage it better. Treasa, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit more, tell us about what you do, and then we'll get into the sort of more the juicy bits, I suppose, of what we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, Assumpta. It's my pleasure. So I'm the Key to You coach, and I'm an empowerment coach, and I deal with mainly helping professional people who are feeling overwhelmed and unlocking their potential to thrive, whether it's personally or professionally, because both will cross over. And like that,
Okay.
when we talk about the doctors, we'll see that even more.
Okay.
Um, so it's all about looking at the person from a holistic perspective and seeing what they need in order to thrive.
Okay.
So it's getting to them what they really need to. And like you said, with the pandemic, a lot of us have been thrown into overwhelmed. We like trying to manage the uncertainty, trying to manage all the different roles that we're now expected to carry with little social support, with little help, and the opportunity we had for delegating our work has been limited or restricted.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got that effect of we're a year into the pandemic. We've all been go, 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 and all our adrenaline has been rushing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still here a year later with very little light at the end of the tunnel. And all of us are just tired. We're exhausted. We're on the spectrum of burning out
Mm-hmm.
because there's nothing hope wise coming to give us that of going, oh, by now, when everybody's vaccinated, we'll get this, we'll get that. So we're not even going to go into that narrative. We're going to focus on what you can do. And like you said, the first thing to do is recognize what overwhelm is in the first place.
Okay, so I suppose talking about it, one thing I've always been very, very aware of is that up on the 11th of March 2020, I was doing some training, doing some staff training up in Sligo, and I was on for the whole day. I remember there was somebody who was coming to that training who couldn't go because they had to make a decision whether they were going to go to Cheltenham or not. And there was all this sort of very, a lot of uncertainty at the time. That night, I was due to give a talk to a group of GPs up in the Northeast. And the following day, when I was traveling back to Galway, everything was closing, everything was sort of being shut down. But then from the GP perspective, everything was just kicking in. They didn't have any chance really to kind of stop and breathe. And it had to be constantly reacting. And they were being given sort of, I suppose, protocols from the Irish College of GPs. They were getting protocols from the HSE, which were changing daily. So they didn't even get time to sort of, stop and get used to doing one thing when that would change and they had to do something different. But they never really got a chance to actually stop, right up to now when we're in the middle of trying to set up vaccination clinics or whatever, and you're dealing with uncertainties like, will the vaccines be delivered to me today or not? And actually the stress that's associated with that is unbelievable, because one thing that I've really seen is that the GPs that I work with are so patient centered, and there's this sense of occasion in practices when the vaccines are arriving, right down to like some practices have balloons and a real kind of sense of light at the end of the tunnel, I suppose, particularly for the elderly people, many of whom haven't seen their relations or friends or anybody, and they're coming now and they see the vaccine as a sign of hope. And that's actually been a really great pick me up for GPs, because I've heard many of them, and many of them have said to me they haven't had that feeling of joy in a long time, because they've been caught in this bubble, which definitely, as you said, like all of us, but particularly in general practice, they have been right at the front line from the 12th of March, if you like. Before that too, of course, but since everything sort of shut down. So Based on that, then, you know, we're talking about, well, how do you possibly manage that, Tressa?
And again, it's to get to the source. So, like you said, it's
Mm.
trying to get them moments of time to reflect.
Yeah.
So, like the big thing is you have been going for a year, you have been, and again, as you think about it, the doctors, especially the people, when they're person centered, they're thinking of the people in the community.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking of when people come talking to them, they want clarity, they want communication, they want that sense of, I feel better now after talking to the doctor.
Mm.
Doctors have been pouring out all their empathy, all their
Mm.
sympathy, all their
Mm.
compassion to everybody else.
Mm.
And it is that aspect of, I suppose, for some people, is they're not realizing that behind the doctor is other roles. They're still
Yeah.
human. They're the parents, they're the siblings, they're the carers, they're the teachers, still trying to homeschool, yet have to be present in their practices, have to be present for their staff, have to still be that strong person.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, if you think about it, all the ways that they were used to topping up and filling up their bucket of compassion, their bucket of resilience, their bucket of stress management have been all wiped because we haven't been able to see our family and friends. We haven't been able to, like you said, switch off.
Mm.
Because when the doctors were going home, they were dealing with what was at home.
Mm-hmm.
And the few minutes that they would have to relax, they were literally checking into the news to go, oh, what's now changed?
Yeah,
What's
it's true. It's so true, because actually that's such a brilliant point, because that's what was actually happening. That oftentimes when things were changing, they weren't even getting that information directly. They were hearing it through the media.
Yeah. And that's so disheartening for them because
Mm.
their patients are ringing them going, oh, did you hear this? No, I didn't hear. And then they have to go and check to see if it's
Yes.
official or not.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, if you think about it, they're so used to operating the other way. They always
Mm-hmm.
had the information first so that they had time to process it,
Yeah.
look at it, reflect on it, and know this is the best way moving forward, especially
Yeah.
for all the different clients, patients who have different things going on. You
Yeah.
have to factor all of that in.
Of
So
course.
it's been huge. And it's also for them, as you said, it's the staff, minding the staff, because the staff are then conscious of, like, well, we're in a high risk work environment. So are we now stressing and bringing that home? And it's been a tough year for everybody.
It
But it
really
definitely, I
has.
think, for the frontline staff,
Mm.
they haven't got that moment to relax. And even now with the vaccinations,
Mm.
like you were talking about, is they're getting we should get the vaccination this week, but now there might be there might be an issue with
Supply
supply.
issues. Yeah,
Now it's the case
exactly.
that they're still not getting in moments of, we've got a week to breathe.
Yeah.
We're still on eggshells at the moment and
Okay.
operating.
So
So
how do we build into that then? How do we build that time in for ourselves?
the first thing in the morning is have some me time. Okay,
Okay.
have your cuppa and set your intentions for the day, as in knowing what your priorities are. We
Okay.
can't do everything like we used to.
Yeah.
So one tip I operate on is block your time. Okay, so if you know between 9 and 11 you have so many patients to address,
Yeah.
so many staff to maybe have meetings with,
Mm.
so many people to check in with, just start focusing on them blocks of time and what do
Okay.
I need to do now.
Okay.
That starts to bring you feel a sense of control versus uncertainty. It brings this overwhelm, kind of dissipates, because you're not focusing on this big long to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
You're focusing on, my priority for the next hour is, so every few minutes you're okay.
Yeah.
And it's giving you that chance to feel you still have a sense of control versus we're losing control and we don't know what our capacity is.
Yeah. It's a great
Another
tip.
thing is, you have to get honest with yourself and go,
Mm-hmm.
what's actually overwhelming me right now? And try and pinpoint it. Is it work? So is it work related? Is it staff issue? Is it the vaccination program, the lack of communication? What's really stressing me out right now? And
Okay.
where is that coming from? And then seeing how it's impacting you. So if you know, well, I'm fine in work, I'm able to keep going, but when I go home, I'm empty. My tank is empty. So, like, if you think of the old phones, we keep charging them, we keep topping them up. We have to do the same for ourselves so that we have energy to go home to our loved ones, and that our loved ones get actually love, not the scrape of the barrel where it's like, don't talk to me, or the anger, or the just, I'll deal with you later.
Mm.
So, because what that does is, we don't want to be that way, but when that happens, we actually become more frustrated and more drained with ourselves, and it causes overwhelm. So
Of
it's a vicious
course.
cycle.
Yeah, and I can totally relate to that. And I can even see and visualize a situation where a GP is coming in to a day where, because they're in a situation now where they're trying to keep themselves and patients and staff safe. So everyone is either coming in by appointment if they're doing face to face, possibly waiting in a car park, being called to come in. But prior to that, you may have already had to do a phone consultation, and arising from that made a decision to bring that patient in. So even what they were doing previously is now possibly taking double the amount of time. So I think again it's acknowledging that and saying, well, actually, is there another way around doing this? And as you say, and it's a very good idea to put your priority tasks into blocks, and outside of those blocks then it's where you stop. And I presume that's what you mean to recharge, just like the analogy of recharging your phone. You need to recharge yourself and stop.
And
Yeah,
again, they know for themselves what works for them. For some, it's
yeah,
prioritizing the exercise. So for
yeah,
some, it's the walk between coming home from work and going straight into family life. For others,
yeah,
it's a case of putting the kids to bed and then doing their exercise.
yeah,
It, what's again another thing for work-life balance that I work with my clients is not comparing yourself to somebody else, because
yeah.
everybody's lifestyle is different right now. How
Hmm.
the pandemic is personally affecting us is different as well. So you got to find what works for you.
Yeah,
And it's putting also, like I'm talking about remote well-being that we're doing as well at the moment. It's people aren't distinguishing between the days. So it's there's no fun anymore at the weekend. There's no Friday feeling.
I
It's none of
know
that.
Friday. Yeah, it's completely gone, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
it's again bringing back that boundary and
yeah,
prioritizing that time. So
yeah,
if it's even just Friday night is the takeaway night and movie night.
yeah.
If Friday is a case of that's the time I actually get cleared up my paperwork and I actually
Mm,
work late, but I have Saturday, Sunday and booked off and there's no work
yeah,
unless it's urgent, and
mm,
classify what urgent is and you work off that.
yeah,
But again, as you said, as something, where's our Friday feeling gone? Where is
yeah,
that something to look forward to right now? So
yeah,
we're not out there. We're not presented with, oh, you can go here, you can go do it there, look at this, look at that. So we have to work from the inside out now and go, well, what actually is my fun? How am I going to prioritize fun at the weekend? So I'm spending quality time with my loved ones.
mm,
I'm bringing a sense of play back for ourselves because
mm,
adults need playtime too.
mm-hmm,
And again, it's that disconnecting from what's overwhelming us. So if work is constantly overwhelming us, where are we actually prioritizing these breaks to say, this is my boundary? I've work
yeah,
turned off for, even if we're turning off 2 hours in the evening,
yeah,
where you're fully present having that meal and you
mm,
go, I'll address anything at 8 p.m. I'll address everything when the kids are in bed.
yeah,
That's fine. As long as you're acknowledging the precious time you are for when you're recharging and not letting the guilt set in of
yeah.
where, oh, I should be doing this for my patients. I should be doing this for my children. I should be, I should be, I should be.
Mm, yeah.
Because that just drains the battery twice as quick.
It's absolutely true, because there was a GP on Twitter yesterday, and she said she felt really guilty because her little girl had to have her fifth COVID test, because she was in the creche, and how guilty she felt that her child had to go through that because the child had some symptoms. She was a doctor. She couldn't go to work until her child got the results back, but she was feeling the guilt of not being in her practice, and she was feeling the guilt of having to have her child tested. And that's a lot of guilt, and it's going to absolutely have a knock on that GP. And that's just one tiny example. So you've given us two really brilliant ideas there. One is where you think about blocking. So rather than looking at the day ahead, go, right, okay, what can I do between 9 and 11? What can I do between say quarter past 11 up to half 12, and then I'm going to have a break, then I'm going to have lunch for half an hour or whatever. And then the second tip was, what did you say to me again? I've got brain fog today, Treasa.
It's okay. It's part of the pandemic as well and the
Yeah,
overwhelm.
yeah, exactly. You're talking to the absolute right person here. Yeah, it's definitely got that. What was the last thing we talked about though? Seriously. Um,
talking about recharging and taking them intentional breaks, but
Oh
putting the boundary
yeah,
around having
yeah,
fun.
that's what it was. Putting a bit of it, putting acknowledging that it's the weekend, acknowledging that okay, I've finished my day's work now. I've done the paperwork, and I think that's so important as well, actually, because as you say, we're not like, well, what are you doing this weekend? You know,
Yeah.
there isn't anything, you know, but there are things we can do. You know,
Yeah.
we're shifting and changing our expectations, and we have to, I
And
suppose,
I
work
think as well,
within those
like you said,
parameters.
the people in the front line,
Yeah,
they've had to just be so reactive.
yeah,
But we're here later. You've
yeah,
learned some valuable skills right now. It's
yeah,
putting into practice.
yeah,
But going back to some of the things from the what used to work for us, we always love having the distinguish between the weekday and the weekend,
yes,
and creating that aspect for ourselves and having that
yes,
fun is
yeah,
absolutely essential. And
yeah,
like you said, even us just even talk about the Friday feeling, we both start smiling because it
yeah,
feels to have fun.
yeah, yeah,
But right now we've been telling ourselves we're in a pandemic, we're in a pandemic, we're in a pandemic.
yeah,
But a lot of things are now online or like that. Again, it's just the preciousness of so many people have said, I value outdoors and I
yes,
value the breakaway, even
mm,
within the 5K, but it's focusing on what you can do and
yeah.
versus
What's
what you
what
can't
you
do.
can't? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Keeping it
then, like you
positive.
said, is taking that guilt away and
Mm,
going, like, another question is if you were just adjusting and still finding it hard to leave the guilt behind,
mm,
ask yourself, what's a good day?
mm,
So, a good day usually means that you can get through, like for me, it could be coaching in the morning, training in the afternoon, and then paperwork. Okay. They're my
yeah.
three priorities. That's a good day work wise. Then
Mm,
what's home like? Well, a good nutritious dinner and lunch,
mm,
some quality time with my loved ones,
mm,
connection with family and friends. So at the end of the night, you're going to sleep going, I've had a good day, and so it takes away the overwhelm
mm,
versus going, everything was perfect, or I did
mm.
nothing wrong. You know, I'm doing everything wrong, and I'm not here
Yeah.
for my family, and I'm not here for my patients, and
Or
going through
myself.
that mental,
Yeah.
emotional baggage and just carrying it and literally loading yourself on as you go to sleep, and
Mm,
then waking up in the morning and carrying it again,
mm,
doing that day after day. So the
yeah.
burnout then will be real.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
is never far away. Something small will happen, like you said.
Mm,
Um, but again, like you're saying, practices are adjusted.
mm.
They're bringing in the balloons. They're bringing in that sense of hope. They're working with each other
Mm.
in such a collaborative way that they are still finding joy in them, what they're doing on the
In
daily
the
basis.
moment, yeah, they are absolutely, which is a really really positive thing. Um, I think those are sort of really good tips, and I suppose definitely one of them that I think stands out for me is to be more conscious, because otherwise we're just going into one day and then rolling into another and rolling into another, and as we're doing that, um, when you find yourself in that moment of kind of overwhelm and stress, you'll often find that it attracts more overwhelm and stress.
Yeah,
So if you let it control you, it will. Whereas if you're more conscious and deciding that actually, no, I'm not going to let this control me, I'm going to go and I'm going to say, well, what's important to me in my life? What type of practice do I want to work in? How
yeah,
do I want to work? What's ideal for me? And also then looking, as you say, that transition from work to home, and doing things that bring you joy, and doing it consciously, not something that's, you know, I should do or I could do, but actually doing it and making a decision and even scheduling it and doing it consciously. So
yeah,
I think, Trust, those are really brilliant tips. I'm sure there's an awful lot more we could talk about.
yeah.
I would love, actually, from your point of view, if you could send me kind of contact details, or actually tell us now, how do we contact Treasa? So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, where is the best place to find you?
The best place to find me is www.keytoyou.ie.
Okay.
I'm on the social media, so you can find all the links there.
Okay.
And like that, I'll add my contact details so you can include it in the comments.
Brilliant. That's lovely. Tressa, it was so lovely talking to you. There's some really great tips in there, both for me as well, and hopefully the GPs will get something from it, because I think it's something that, as you said at the very beginning, because they're looking after everybody else in such a way and trying to keep all the balls in the air as they're doing, that they do forget to fill their own bucket ultimately. So I think you've given us some great tips there. Thank you again for sharing them. And yeah, we'll have your details, and if anybody wants to get in touch with you, they can. Thanks again,
Perfect.
Treasa.
And again, just for my own sake, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak,
Yeah.
but also for every doctor, anybody in the practices working, a big thank you from me to you for all you're doing.
Oh, that's lovely. A nice note to finish on. Thanks, Treasa.
Yeah.